Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Manoka, and if you are new here, please remember to subscribe as well as turn on notifications so you'll be notified every time that I upload a video. So I am very excited today to have my first guest actually on my channel. So I've been doing this for a few months, but you're lucky number one. So please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Khanya. I am a chartered accountant. I am currently working as a senior consultant in a consulting firm in the United States. In my spare time, I'm a fitness enthusiast influencer. If you want to catch me on at Khanya91.
All right, thank you so much. So Khanya, I mentioned to you, or I actually messaged you on Instagram. So I know that most people will know you for the fitness, but you have been speaking probably the past 6 months. You've been mentioning investing here and there, and I could pick up that some of your followers were maybe asking you about finances and the like. So that's really the motivation and why I reached out to you, is to say let's have a chat for beginner investors. So what do you look out for? What do you need to do to get guys started? So this video really is for anyone who hasn't gotten started yet. Whether you're a student, whether you've been working for 5 years, there's absolutely no shame. So it's really for beginners.
Yes.
So I'd like you to tell everyone a little bit about your investing journey.
I'm glad that we're talking about, like, let's not shame people, because people think that just because we're like chartered accountants that somehow we're supposed to know everything regarding investing, and that's like a whole other world altogether, right? So yeah, investing for me came a little bit later than most people would think. People think that just when you start working immediately you're going into investing, but most of the time you're just wasting money spending your salary on goodness knows what, and then you realize, okay, I need to get a little bit more serious. For me, my investing journey started when I was in the United States, although actually I should precede this by saying that I did start investing in unit trusts, you know, with a broker, and that's because I felt very intimidated by the JSE and like buying stocks and being introduced into ETFs. Just seemed something very much bigger than myself. So I thought, you know, let me pay this broker because he seems to know everything, right? Looking back now, I feel like it was very expensive. So unless you are incredibly rich and you're ready to part with 2% of your money, yeah, you can do that. But I think investing is definitely something that can be done by anyone, which is what I learned when I moved to the United States. So I had a coworker who was using a platform where they were investing in shares and ETFs. And you know, I just became curious, I guess, and started asking him questions, and it just seemed naturally something that's just came up to me, and decided, you know what, let me try this out. So I did try with money, not really understanding the principles between, because there is a difference between investing and saving, and I learned that quite quickly when I realized, oh, I don't actually have enough savings to buy bread at the end of the month because I use all of my money to invest. So that is, you know, you go in learning things, so you're not going to be perfect. I always use fitness analogies. It's like you go to the gym, right? You're not going to know every single piece of equipment that's there, but it's all about starting. And I'm glad that I did start, but it did have a lot of ups and downs. I don't know about you. What was your investing journey like?
So with me, I also didn't start on day one. I wonder where all my money went the first 4 years or so that I was working. So I always say my investing journey started the day that a colleague of mine got fired.
Oh,
so
interesting.
In the year 2016, someone that I worked with very closely got fired, and it was very emotional because it was unexpected.
Yeah.
Then when I got home, I think questions like started coming up in my mind. I'm like, if that had happened to you, buddy, how long would I have been okay for? And I had qualified by then already, so I was earning okay money, but you know, life was getting in the way and I wasn't really serious about it. So that's how I started, and super trial and error at the time, but I'm so grateful, like now that I think there's a lot more information out for people versus many years ago.
That's true.
When you spoke about, you know, you didn't start on day one, I actually also thought probably on day one, like maybe when we started working, there weren't a lot of like self-investing platforms.
No, they weren't.
Like,
definitely not.
So you would have had to pay a broker, and you would have had to buy a share. I don't know if like long time ago there was things like fractional shares and
because that's a new concept actually.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I started. So for yourself, where do you think the passion for investing came from?
I mean, I have to be frank with you guys. For me, it was just I don't want to be broke. And I feel like, you know, it can be easy once you get started with it. You realize, and a lot of these platforms that you've mentioned do make it a lot easier for us to really become well-informed investors, because they also do offer you information before you're about to, you know, make your investments. So for me, I don't know if I'm like extremely passionate about shares and investing, but I like nice things, guys, okay? And it comes with being responsible with your money and delayed gratification, right? Because when you are investing, there needs to be, well, at least for me, I'm not the kind of trader, or I mean, I'm not the kind of investor that likes to trade quickly. You know, I like to have that long-term view. So you need to have that delayed gratification, but you know that in the end, this is something that I'm investing for. So I want to say that I'm passionate about the things that I want to get, right? And this is the vehicle to get me there. So that is more so what I'm interested or care about, not so much about the daily activities of the shares. Yes.
So what's your horizon? So you spoke about what you're working towards. So what is your outlook? How many years? How many decades? You know?
Well, for me, and that's a very good question. Well, for me, I have 5-year increments. So I normally will have a serious sit down with all my entire portfolio every 5 years. So I've only just started, so I've only had one 5-year situation happen. And that's when I really am like, okay, this share is not doing well, I need to pull out of this, I need to make these changes. I try not to make those kind of changes annually unless something drastic has happened. COVID is a year where maybe some kind of change might have to happen, but again, I would not advise people to do that, because, you know, yes, a lot of people are seeing a lot of dips, but the market tends to correct itself eventually, right? So I'm expecting that at some point things will correct themselves. So my horizon is always just 5 years. 10 years would be more so if I'm thinking about like, okay, if I get married and I need to buy a house with this person, this is the kind of place that I would like to live. And for me, you know, being between two countries, South Africa and America, I have to really be cognizant of the fact that it's very expensive to buy a home in the US. So I don't want to be irresponsible with money. So that's like another 10-year outlook that I have. I don't know if I will get married, when I'll get married, all of those things, but you need to plan for the situation that might arise. So yeah, it's a 5 to 10 year increment that I'm looking at. And then again, like, some people want to invest so that they can someday give shares to their children. That's something I also want to be able to do at some point if I do have children. So yeah, it's more so about your life and as it changes and the desires that you have, because in your early 20s, like, all you wanted is the fastest car ever, and that was that, right? And then you realize all the stuff depreciates, so what's the point? So then you're like, okay, no, maybe a home, maybe this, maybe that. And again, a home is also another form of investment, I would say. You know, you're changing your money into something, another investment vehicle. But yeah, I think for me, it is just more so, what is it that I want to achieve, and in how many years do I see that happening? And then, you know, adjusting those portfolios for then. And for you?
I saw the other day, you actually posted like a house tour on your stories on Instagram. And then she showed the price tag. So you said, oh, it's only 5.5 million. And I thought, that's steep.
Yeah.
Then you said it's dollars.
$5.5 million.
Can you block all of us who are from South Africa? Because even if we suffer well, we're like, I get paid in ZAR. Trying to think when and how I would ever afford.
I mean, look,
I know you were manifesting. That took me.
No, I mean, look, guys, just to be clear, I cannot afford a $5.5 million house yet. But I
One day.
do believe in, it's the same thing with CASA, right?
Yeah.
So like when I was a high schooler, the thought of CASA seemed so grand, so far away. 7 years, like to me it was like, like a doctor. I'm not about that life, right?
Yeah.
Minimum, 7 years minimum, right?
Yeah.
Some people take a longer route.
I took the scenic route, so I know who some people is.
So exactly, so to you it's like, it's so intimidating, but I don't want us to ever feel like it's not something that you can at least work towards. I might not ever get the $5.5 million home, but I'd like to think that that is where I want to try summit. You know, it could even be more than that at some point, who knows? But it's just the idea of like, okay, I don't want people to feel intimidated by large numbers and think they're impossible. It's just about learning to break it down on daily steps. Like, okay, so it means I have to be quite restrictive on certain things in order for me to get there, right? Because you have to be smart about certain things, and maybe it means that you have to venture out a little bit more, take on a little bit more risk, etc. to get there. But if you don't have a goal in place, like, where are you going?
100%.
It becomes so difficult because like you're pouring petrol in your car, but where exactly are you going with that? Yeah. So.
Okay. No, I thought that was cool. So I thought I'd just mention that.
Yeah.
All right. So then let's get started then talking about tax-free savings. So tax-free savings, the government introduced a few years ago, and they give us a 500,000 rand limit per lifetime that you can invest. So don't be fooled by the word savings account. It is an investing platform, and you shouldn't like withdraw the money out the way that you would with a normal bank account. So 500,000 per lifetime per person, and 36,000 per annum. And the super fun thing about tax-free savings is right there in the name. So none of the proceeds will be taxed. So this is the best platform really for beginners. I actually, when I started buying individual shares, and most of them that first year, you see what had happened was they all went into the red. At the time, I didn't know about stop losses and the like. You think you'll recover and whatever else. So really for beginners, I wish I had known on day one, if someone had just said, okay, just buy this ETF or buy this. So basically, let's talk about ETFs within tax-free savings. So ETFs are basically exchange traded funds, and they track different indexes. It can track bonds, it can track commodities, industries, and the like. So tell me a bit about your journey with ETFs.
So what had happened was, when I started investing, I was always into the stock picking situation, which, you know, I'm trying to be a better person about it. It's just so addictive, guys. But you're right, like ETFs are actually really good in the sense that, you know, you're buying a little bit of each company basically. That's what it's trying to do for you, because we don't have like loads and loads of money to buy each individual company, the best 500 of them. So basically buying little bits and pieces of it, and because these companies tend to are their top whatever in their own index, they tend to track pretty well, and you are diversifying, right? So which is a very big thing in investing. I'm sure you guys have heard about this, but diversification is a huge thing because it helps to, you know, limit your risks basically. So ETFs, I want to say that I have gotten a lot better about it this year, just because you know, I have seen massive fluctuations with the stocks that I buy, because, you know, they're all getting affected by COVID. But in general, like ETFs tend to be less affected by what the markets are doing, right? The fluctuation is a lot less, right? Because decisions are not just being made by one person in one company. It's just it has to be an accumulation of decisions that would need to be made in order for it to see a massive dip. So for me, ETFs have definitely come into the fold now. I am just purely because I'm investing mainly in American market. It would be the S&P 500, which is the best 500 companies in that particular year. I think it is in 1 year, that they basically track. So that's just basically how I went about the whole ETFs thing. I have to be honest with you, I did go with ETFs that I've been hearing a lot about. Like, I haven't had the opportunity to really sit down and really focus on what is it that I want in terms of my investment goals. For now, I was just like, okay, I'm spending way too much money in stock, in just individual stock. I need to put it in ETFs. And these Vanguard, S&P 500, all of those ones were the ones that I've been hearing about on the news, and I thought, okay, they're credible. I'll start putting a debit order in. So it's not one massive chunk of money that just goes in. It's every month a certain amount of money goes into that ETF.
Okay. So you mentioned something interesting, maybe not knowing or being informed about why. And I think I was that way when I started out, is when someone talked about a share, I would buy it. So have you seen fact sheets?
No. We're being honest, right? We're being honest. Yes.
So I was like you when I started buying. Is they tell you buy S&P, and you hear about it on the business news every day.
And you're like, yeah,
S&P must be the one. So the fact sheet basically tells you in that specific index what are the companies that are in there, and also what is the weighting.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Because sometimes the weighting can be different.
So when you open a fact sheet, let's say you're opening the S&P 500, it will show you it's got this much Amazon, it's got this much Microsoft, and show you the specific percentages. It also shows you what's the TER, so that's the total expense ratio. So basically how much commission are you paying per share that you bought. And some can be very expensive, which means that the broker or the person in the background is taking a percentage. Again, we spoke about percentages before. And then some are like very cheap, like 0.4% maybe that they are taking. So you need to also look at that to see what it is costing you. When you look at the fact sheets, you also get to see where you're duplicating shares.
Yes, that would make sense.
So if you own Amazon in your personal capacity, and you've bought S&P 500 and you've bought Nasdaq, you
are buying
you think you're diversifying, but you actually have Amazon in 10 different places.
That makes sense.
So that's also something very important to look at, is in the fact sheet, what are the details, what is it costing you per annum. So that's a very nice place to start. Alright, so what do people need to know before they start investing? I think nowadays, because more people are talking about investing, everyone is very curious, and people want to get into it. But you also spoke about, are you jumping in and jumping out? It can't really be that. So in your view, what would you say are the things that need to be secure before one starts even thinking about investing?
I think getting a budget is very important, because you need to at least know, it's, again, I use gym analogies, but it's similar to, you need to know how many calories you're eating, right, before you can even go in there and decide how much you're going to work out and how much food you're going to eat. Similar with money, right? You actually need to know what is my income and what are my expenses first, so that you know what you're dealing with. You can't just be like, okay, I'm going to buy a $5 million house, but you actually don't know what your budget is looking like, right? Because you actually could have more expenses than you have income, right? And we don't want that situation either. So you actually need to look at that, and then see. Also, what's really nice about when you draw up a budget is that then you can identify which expenses you can get rid of. Like, you start realizing that you have subscriptions in places that you'd completely forgotten about, and it's taking money every month. So having a budget really just gives you the real truth about where you are financially, right? So that's where I normally would think that a person should start. And then from there, okay, how much. So the advice has been that you need to actually save 6 months worth of your salary. In the event that something happens and you get fired, with COVID situation happening now, like, everything has just taught us that these emergency funds are critical now. Also, for instance, like maybe the geyser bursts or something, and then you have to pay for things like that, or your tires or whatnot. So you need to have money that can help you live with, massive payments that you never really would make every month, right? That comes out of your savings. So you need to have that first, I would think. And then after which, the money that you can save I mean, you don't need to save, then you can go into investing. That being said, though, let's be realistic. Like 6 months worth of your salary is a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money. It doesn't matter how much money you're making. Like, in fact, if you're making more money, it feels like a lot more money that you have to save, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, realistically speaking, I just did it in like certain increments. I was like, okay, I have to save more than I'm investing, but I want to do them both simultaneously.
Yes.
That's what I did.
Yes.
And that seems to work for me. So, and also, again, it's because my expenses are very different to, say, I'm a single mom.
Yes.
Their expenses are going to be way more than that, and you need to be
Yes.
cognizant of that. I get a lot of people coming into my DM saying, hey, you know, I got all this money from my retrenchment package. Where should I invest it?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I'm like, maybe you should save it like first,
because there's nothing coming in.
There's
anymore.
nothing coming in anymore. You don't know what expenses that are gonna creep up on you in 6 months, and then you have to go sell your shares. And what I've learned is that there's tax on shares. Okay.
Yeah.
It goes, and you don't think about it because you're just seeing the increase in your shares, and you're like, oh, I'm making a profit, but you're forgetting that the government still needs a piece of that.
The government wants a
piece of everything.
I wish I could just give them that flesh. I'm like, is this enough for you?
So now you end up selling your favorite shares that were actually doing really well, and you're gonna get taxed on those shares just so that you have to pay for, you know, tires or whatever. For bread. Yeah. Exactly. So guys, just be cognizant of the fact that you need to know what your financial health is looking like at the moment before you make decisions on what it is that you can realistically do. It mustn't give you stress. It should never be a stressful situation for you. If it is, it probably something is not right there and you need to fix it, because you know eventually what happens is that it permeates in other areas of your life. Being broke, being unable to pay for things does affect other parts of your life too. So you want to make sure that you're financially healthy in that way.
Yeah. All right, so agreed, spot on. So 2 things that must like be in place is firstly your budget, because that's your foundation.
It's like a scale.
It's like your scale. So I'll post a link to the budgeting video that I did earlier in the year, just for you guys to refer to, and then your emergency savings. But I wanted to say to you, you said earlier you did it simultaneously, and that worked for you. I probably also did the same if I reflect back. But the only reason why it didn't end badly or end in tears for us is because nothing happened to our income. Right?
That's true.
So the reason why people advise you to do it the other way first is because you actually can't predict. No one plans to get fired, no one plans to get retrenched, and then you find yourself there, but you know, you were focusing on your investing goals and blah blah blah, and then the emergency savings is not where it needs to be.
No, I agree, and I think it depends on what is your appetite for these things.
And then very important, if you are using the tax-free savings account, is that you are not paying tax. So we spoke about that earlier. We don't want to give SARS any more than they're already taking from us. So that's also a great benefit, because on your individual stocks you would have paid capital gains tax and the like when you sold.
Yes, that's very true. You don't want that because the tax can be quite steep.
You don't want that heat. All right, so I want us to talk about who your fighter is in terms of ETFs. So your top fave of the moment. Please remember that we're not financial advisors. This is simply what we are enjoying or loving at the moment.
The S&P 500 for me has been at least the go-to place for me for the Vanguard Growth ETF S&P 500. I think that's the title of it. And that seems to be doing okay, but again, you know, it's not growing as fast as other stocks. But that's just because stocks are more affected by what is happening in the market, whereas the ETFs are not. So that definitely is. And then the second one is a silver. It's commodity is silver. I cannot remember the name, but it is, again, commodities are a very good place to go into now, because you know, with uncertainty, a lot of people tend to go into commodities because it's a safer sort of instrument to invest in.
All right, and then on my end, I'd say I've got two
so
fighters. Number one was rhodium.
Yes.
Which sometimes I like last year it actually was a roller coaster because the price would skyrocket and then it was all over the place. But I really loved the rhodium ETF. And then probably the one going forward so I have found that seems to outperform I'd say the S&P.
Nice.
So I've been enjoying the Nasdaq 100 more than I am the S&P. And yeah, so like I said, if you look at the fact sheets, you'll actually see that very similar because their top 10 shares are actually very close. There might be maybe only a 1 or 2 company difference, but Nasdaq seems to have had better returns than S&P.
Now I know. Now I'm gonna go check it out.
Let me pull up this
I'll get the fact sheet now that I know it. Yeah.
All right, and then from a resources perspective, so I want to talk to everyone about what tools or platforms they can use.
Yes.
So very important. I think it's good to do your own research. I use a specific platform that's very popular in South Africa.
Yes.
Called Easy Equities, and I know a lot of your followers have been asking you about it.
Yes, and I also just recently got onto Easy Equities. Yeah.
Okay, so Easy Equities is very affordable. There's like a lot of advantages to using it, especially for a beginner. But I'll post a resource as usual to guide you guys in terms of. There's a website that actually shows different investing platforms and what they cost. So that would be really beneficial.
Yes.
So we're not selling a specific broker to you. It's just simply what we're using. And I think you used the US equivalent.
Oh yes, I use Robinhood, which is the US equivalent, but it's the same thing, similar concept. And with the Easy Equities, what I found is you can buy shares overseas anyway, so you don't actually need to get into Robinhood if you're here. Yeah.
All right, and then another resource that I'll post for you guys to check out is 2 websites that actually show you different ETFs. So one is called Easy ETFs, and the other one is called ETF Central.
Okay.
And it basically shows you, that's where you find the resources, the fact sheets. You can go and click a few ETFs and actually say, can I compare these?
Yeah.
So that's where you start to see the duplication. Man, Amazon. Oh, Apple.
Yeah.
So they'll compare the prices, see the returns over time and everything of the like. So I'll post those resources for you guys as well, so that when you go and do your homework, I always give homework.
Nice.
So the challenge for this week then for you guys is, if you are a beginner, to go sit down and really think, are you ready to start? So is your budget in place? Are your emergency savings in place?
Yes.
And then if you are then ready, then you then can start and register an account. I'd say even if you think you aren't ready, register an account and start using demo accounts.
Yes.
Because you can actually learn. So maybe it takes you a year to be ready to start investing. In that year, you can actually pick up the lingo and practice without real money. And I know I've seen so many people who are like, they made money in the demo account and then they made losses in the real account.
Really?
I don't
work.
Yeah, I actually don't know. So maybe the share picked up in demo, and then you go and buy the same share at a higher price, and then
obviously gonna have the drop.
Then it drops, which means maybe you didn't understand the share or whatever. And you now bought too expensive. But I like demo accounts, so even if you're not ready, register.
It gets you more comfortable.
Register, start learning before you're gonna put your real money. So that is the challenge then, is to review your budget, to look at your emergency savings, and then if you are ready, then to start investing with real money. If you aren't yet ready from a budget and savings perspective, to first do a demo up until the day that you are feeling ready.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. First and foremost, know where you are, like health-wise, in terms of your budget. Know what you can afford to actually invest after your savings, after your expenses. I think that's a key thing, at least, that I needed to know. To just like shares and investments are not as intimidating as they might appear. And I think, as you had mentioned, using a demo to really help you get used to the whole platform really makes a big difference, and you will realize that, oh, okay, this is just how things go. So try practice it and see how it goes with the demo accounts, because you're not using your own money. And then the last thing I would say is just, it's okay to actually just have like real big goals for yourself financially. Don't think that you're undeserving of actually getting yourself out of the cycle of being broke and being, unable to pay for things. You can, if you work really hard at being consistent and disciplined. And I would always recommend getting a debit order to go into these investments, so you don't have to ever think about it. It just goes, right? If you becoming very consistent and disciplined over time, you will start seeing yourself getting out of a bad situation into a much healthier situation.
How long would you say it took for you to see the light, or where this was going?
I would say probably on the second year. Yeah, and I think maybe just because then you become more confident, start looking outside of the companies that you've been hearing about, start looking at other places. Yeah, I think about the second. But again, it depends on how bad was your situation. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And like I said, when I see people talking about investing, I do get excited, because 10 years ago,
No one was.
I don't think many people were, and I especially like seeing women
I agree.
talking more about investing, and I think there's actually a thing that says we make better investors.
We do,
but apparently
statistically we do.
We take longer to start, so more men are in investing, maybe because we get paid less.
Yes,
there's that. But once we're in it, apparently we are killing this. So it's so exciting to see women doing that. And then we'll be able to buy those penthouses.
Yes, I think it's just about not putting agenda towards an investment thing and being like, oh, only men can invest because they seem to know more. No, anyone can invest.
All right, thank you. And until next time, please remember, when we talk about money, we want to learn how to earn more, spend less, invest and save more, and have fun while we wait for compounding to do its magic.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Until next time, bye.
Bye, guys.